Welcome back to the Intelligent Builder podcast, sponsored by Plutus Agents. We help residential contractors eliminate manual chaos by connecting all their tools and systems so you stop wasting time on admin and lift margins without the extra hire. If that sounds useful, connect with me on LinkedIn and DM me the word growth for a free consultation. So today I'm joined by Mark English, the founder of Mark English Architects, a San Francisco studio known for modern residential work built to last. Mark started his firm in 1992 after Cal Poly and Syracuse's Florence program, and he's navigated multiple economic cycles while keeping a tight, craft-focused boutique practice. Mark, it's great to have you on.
Thank you, Owen. Great to be here.
Of course, yeah. So could you give us the quick story from Cal Poly to Florence, launching your own shop in 92, and what was an early decision that made the firm viable?
Great, thanks. Yeah, way back in deep history, I graduated from Cal Poly after 5 years with a professional degree, and then I took the architectural tests, got licensed pretty young, and I realized that I needed to get out and see the world. So I found a graduate program through Syracuse University in Florence, Italy, and went off to Italy and stayed there for a year and got exposed to Europe and different cultures and what it was like to actually work in a different situation, which probably helped me be a little more flexible in the world. And I did that as a young person. Came back to San Francisco, back to the Bay Area, where I'm originally from, and worked for a small firm here for 3 or 4 years and got a sense of what it would take to run a business, and also realized that I was a very valuable employee, but not an easy employee to handle, which told me that I really should have my own shop. And so in 1992, I decided to open my shop. And within a year, we had a really tremendous recession to deal with. One of the ways that I've always gotten through these recessions, there have been many of them, that one in particular, was that I had lots of skills from Cal Poly that were not necessarily all that common. We learned a lot about engineering. I had taught myself how to do Title 24 energy calcs and so on, and even structural calcs, because the licensed architect in California can do structural. We just don't tend to do it because of liability. So during the recession, I was able to use that broad base of knowledge to do work that was still necessary for almost every project when actually architectural design wasn't as necessary. So I did engineering for other firms that were doing, other architecture firms that were doing small projects. And I did energy calcs, which were required by law for every single project I could get my hands on. So that's really how I got through that recession. I think that running one's own business really requires a broad base of experience and experimentation. I think that the big recession in 2008 through 10 was another test for a lot of firms. And we used that time to explore early social media and blog involvement, and we went whole hog into it. I got involved with the House community before it was even a viable platform. I knew them early on in 2007 and started developing my House profile early, and found that that whole digital world was very useful in creating new work for us.
Yeah, awesome. So you had a pretty strong educational base, and then you got some experience, and then you could open your own shop. So I know you said in our previous call that you've kind of kept the team pretty small intentionally over the last, 33 years. So what are some of the advantages that you have by staying boutique, speed, quality control?
Good questions. You're right. We've never been more than 6 or 7 people. My main motivation has been to keep my hand in every single design. I am not interested in delegating the design direction of the firm, because there's so much blood on the tracks doing this business, and I'm not really willing to go through all that and then lose control of the design intention. So I found that keeping a small, diverse team where everyone's invested in the design outcome works really well. And we have young people. We have people in high school, actually. We do a lot of coaching of high school students through the Architectural Foundation of San Francisco. We have kids come in, they become immediately useful. And I think they find that really useful, and they have good opinions. Young people have great opinions. The lack of education sometimes is a real benefit, because sometimes what we learn in college is is what the professor believes is true and not what might be true.
Yeah, that's actually really cool. You hire a lot of younger people, like even down to high school. It gives you
Hmm.
a newer, kind of fresh perspective, definitely different than what you're probably used to, which is pretty cool. So,
Correct. Absolutely.
what are some things that you do delegate? Because I know you refuse to delegate a lot, but what do you delegate to make sure that you can really have good quality and client trust at all times?
We delegate support, obviously, when it comes to structural engineering. At this point, we have great consultants that we work with. We have 20 and 25-year relationships with landscape architects that we delegate. Let's stay involved with that aspect of the work. HR is delegated, etc. Everything, including model making, is done in-house. We make our own models. We do our own illustrations. We just had a book come out, a monograph came out through Images Publishing in Australia. We handled all of the illustrations in-house. I found a young person who had a certain kind of personal style and illustration, so we invited her to run with that to illustrate the book. So anything creative, for the most part, is either directly managed by us in-house or is managed by a close associate consultant.
Okay, cool. That makes a lot of sense. So, what
Mhm.
about what's kind of the core job that clients are hiring you to do today? And does that differ from what it was normally in like 5, 10 years ago?
Yes, I like to tell people that I'm a late bloomer, so I am obviously not a youngster anymore, and it has taken 30 or 40 years to become good at this profession. And my goal has always been doing what we're doing right now. It's taken that long to get here, which is working on rural homes in California or the West in tremendously beautiful settings that I like to visit on site visits. So places like Napa and Carmel Valley and Austin, Texas, and places Arizona, etc. In the beginning, we really had to take whatever we could get. As I mentioned, I was doing work that wasn't even architecture directly designed. And then we had some early success in the first 10 years doing remodels and additions to homes. We love residential work. That to me is the most interesting. So that's where I stay. There's a voyeuristic pleasure in really getting into a family and seeing how it works and then creating a home that can accommodate their needs. So we didn't really get to the point of developing new homes until we were at least 10, 12 years into our practice. It's a very competitive world in the Bay Area, and permitting and entitlement, property entitlement is very involved. And to be honest, I just didn't have the skills to be great at that at first. It took probably 10 or 12 years to get good at it. And then it's taken another 10 years to get really good at design work. So that's why people come to us now. They are looking for a small firm that is completely invested in the design intention of a project and is in love with the landscape and the terrain of the site that they want to develop. So that's why they come to us.
Awesome. Yeah, I remember in our last conversation you were telling me how you're drawn to the West topography and how it's so
Mhm.
different and it's very interesting to build on and build around. So I kind of want to stick to the length of years that you've kind of been working. So you've been through all kinds of economic cycles, right? So what's a cycle
Yes.
lesson that you learned the hard way in one of those cycles, and what's a permanent process that changed because of it?
Well, one lesson I did learn is related to employees. There was a slowdown around 2000, 2001 as well, and I can't even remember what it was related to, whether it was the Russian financial crisis or whether it was a dot com bust, probably that. I was new to having employees. So I had three employees. Our work in a way dried up very, very abruptly in that recession, even though it was a short recession. And I made the mistake of holding on to everybody as long as possible. And what that did is it meant that I ended up making no money that year and my employees were fine. They had a job, but I used up my piggy bank keeping them going. And the lesson was, as much as you love employees, they can't come first. They have other options. They have the ability to move around. As a business owner, you've invested in your whole setup and you need to protect that. So I love my employees, but I'm in the lifeboat first.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's definitely on the consequences, negative consequences side of being a business owner at times. Okay, cool. So
Yeah.
continuing to look back. So what was an inflection point between maybe press or awards or publications that really changed your pipeline the most?
Strangely enough, this has just happened in the last 3 years. We had relatively decent success with awards. Everyone likes awards. I like awards. Staff likes awards, especially the younger staff. Clients react to rewards. They really do. And publishing. And we've done pretty well for a long time, but we hadn't quite ever hit it out of the park. And this is a really interesting lesson to me. We have a project that finished up a couple of years ago down in Carmel Valley. And that project, for whatever reason, struck a chord, and it's won at least 45 awards. So I changed my attitude about how to submit for awards. I used to really agonize over it, and I would try to make the submission perfect. I would get all kinds of consensus from friends, staff, colleagues to make it the best. But I had a strategy about 10 years ago that took a long time to develop, but it finally has, which was number one, get on awards juries so that you understand what it looks like from the other side. So I have. So I've been in a lot of juries now over the last 10 years, some of them at the national level, regional and local with AIA and ASID and so on. So number one, what does it actually look like on the other side? What are people looking for when they have all of 20 seconds to look at your submission? That helped me really gear up about 2 or 3 years ago with this house, the Meadow House, which I realized was getting some attention even when the photographer was there. He said, yeah, Mark, Joe Fletcher said this could go somewhere. It's just, it's a fantastic house, but it's looking also in this other world of photographs, whatever that is, it's looking really good here because that's my job as Joe Fletcher. And I can tell you, pay attention to this. So my approach then with awards after that was to enter as many as possible and to do it as quickly as possible and as painlessly. A lot of those awards submissions, I don't spend more than an hour on. That's it. I just do it. I just go. And we've had probably, in the last 3 years, we've won something 75% of the time.
Wow.
The other thing that happened, that this is a big lesson to me about being overly cautious or being afraid to find out you're not good enough or you're an imposter. After Meadow House did well, I went back and backfilled with some of the older projects, and they won a bunch of awards and continue to. So they could have won awards 3-4 years ago. I just didn't have the confidence or the system down yet to really take advantage of that. So at this point now, we're having a crazy year where we're basically winning an award every week, literally. So we're up to, 40 so far this year, and there are a bunch, I think, still coming. What's the purpose in awards besides feeling good? It's sort of like a dopamine hit when you get that email. Our clients actually do pay attention. They really do. They may not pick through them, but when they see the tendency, like when they see the collection of lists of awards and publications and the books and so on, they come to the office and they see the certificates. It's a big deal. And the biggest benefit is that if they hire us, they have to accept that we know what we're doing. If you have all of these certificates and you want to not listen to what the professional is asking of you, then you've made a mistake. And luckily that hasn't happened. I think it's sort of it's almost a filter. It filters out people who don't want a high-level collaborator to work with as a designer. My advice now to younger people and my colleagues, my colleagues my own age, my level, don't be afraid of, quote, failure. We just have to try. Throw them out there. Don't get attached to stuff. Same with publications. You read about authors all the time. I submitted my novel to 15 people and I was turned down every time until it finally got published. And or a musician. My daughter's a musician. And, she told me that a long time ago, said, Dad, a good song is a good song. Whether it's a great song has to do with whether the right people accidentally run across it, usually. So there's a lot of luck involved, but you have to be playing if you want to get lucky.
Yes,
So.
I love that. Yeah, that's definitely true. You can't get lucky if you don't take action. Not everything has to be
Mm-mm.
perfect. That's a lot with like outreach, and if you're cold calling, like volume matters more than perfection because eventually you'll get something. But huge congrats on all
Exactly.
those awards and publications. That's incredible.
Yeah, thank you. It's been interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I bet. I bet. What does your daughter play? I'm curious.
Well, she's a singer-songwriter. She went to Berkeley and Boston. She always had bands when she was young. She's a guitar player and a singer. And like all musicians, they eventually play everything to some degree. Drums, keyboard, nothing with a bow so far, but everything else has been attempted, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely. That's really cool because I've been asking because my dad's also a musician and songwriter and singer. He plays
Hmm.
guitar, but just like you're saying, he can also play the drums and like the piano and stuff like that. So yeah,
Definitely.
that makes a lot of sense. Okay, but back to what we were chatting about. So you launched like pre-CAD and BIM and all that good stuff. So
Yep.
what discipline from, the paper era workflows still gives you kind of an edge today?
We still do a lot. We do a lot of hand drawing, not drafting, but it's not only me, but most of my staff. We do a lot of 3D drawings of details in particular. So because either I select people who can do that, or we make people do that when or we don't make them, we invite them to do that, and then they do it. But um, those skills are extremely useful because we interact with people who can't read drawings very well. You're dealing with builders, and some builders, have the staff and the hierarchy to be able to interpret the drawings, which aren't always easy even for us. We look at structural drawings sometimes and think, which level is this? I'm not even sure if I'm looking at the ceiling level or the floor below. So one of our jobs is to we use digital drawing. We do all kinds but we do a lot of hand drawing, showing all the components coming together. We take those sheets, we plastic laminate them and nail them on the wall on the job site so the guys can really get it. So that skill has made its way through the digital sieve. We still, and this is a rite of passage in this office, we build our own models. We do it all by hand. We don't do 3D printing. I don't think you gain anything as a designer by sending a file to a 3D printer. You're not engaged with that process. There is something primitive about doing something with your hands that connects with your brain, and boredom helps you think, because building a model is boring. And in that process, random thoughts occur in the back of the brain subconsciously that are actually related to design. And I really believe that that's one of the benefits of our practice, and one reason why we're doing so well is that we're tactically, not tactically, we are tactilely, if that's a word, connected to the work. I think it's important. We don't go around, I don't, and my staff doesn't sketch when we travel. Nobody's sketching buildings anymore like we did in college, which was a whole different era where architectural drawings were so diverse. You had people like Mark Mack doing his airbrush stuff, and just leave the skin, and all these people doing drawings. And then the digital era came and all that stuff disappeared. If you go to a university, all the drawings look pretty similar. Everyone's got Rhino or whatever it is. And they all look very similar. So that expression of individuality has really dried up. I think it is what it is. But the effort of being connected to the work, I think, still happens through the hands. And I will challenge any architect to think about this. Whenever we have a public hearing or we go to a design review board meeting, whatever, we always have, even if it's basic, a cardboard model of the project. That's the thing that gets the most attention every single time. We put that in the center of the table. We have a great, 3D, walkthrough imagery being projected up on the screen, whatever. They'll glance at that, but the object, we're still in human bodies that touch things. And so having an object is still, is, is very activating.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. It shows a different level of commitment and creativity in the whole process. And honestly, it probably
Hmm.
keeps it a lot, definitely harder at times, but simple because adding all that technology could just complicate things too. So that's
Hmm.
really, really interesting that you kind of keep that approach now. But I also am interested in where maybe systems, tech, or AI are kind of
Hmm.
quietly removing friction for you since you've grown in these last, 30 something years.
Hmm. One thing we did when we did start getting involved with CAD, we did not go to AutoCAD or any of those. We went with we went with the early integrated program called ArchiCAD, which was 2D and 3D together, developed in Hungary of all places in the late 80s, early 90s on the Macintosh platform. And it was the thing that, everyone emulates now. That's what all these programs do now for the most part. We moved on mostly because I couldn't find, unless I had European employees, they didn't have experience with ArchiCAD. I learned ArchiCAD at the time. This was the late 90s. But as I became more of, an editor in so many ways and the early design person, I needed people to execute. So we moved on to a different platform that's mostly a drafting platform. And then we use SketchUp for 3D modeling because it's very easy. And even our clients, if they're willing to pay a small fee, they can download SketchUp. They can look at files that we share with them. So we use that pretty extensively. AI is very interesting. I'm not afraid of it. I think it's going to be very useful in many ways. There's a woman named Michelle Kaufman who was an architect involved with some of the early blue homes and so on, some of the modern manufactured homes industry. She went off to Google for a while, like 8 or 9 years ago. And what she was working on after she could talk about it was an early AI program that would help people design very complicated buildings like hospitals. It makes perfect sense. If you have Google data, and again, this was a while ago, if you have the data of all of this information that's coming in about traffic flow in a specific location, what the sun, the moon, everything are doing, what are the latest specs for in 3D of various hospital equipment and all of that, you can see why an AI assistant that could help put together layouts and arrangements would be quite beneficial. It doesn't take away from the architecture. That was never the architecture. The architecture is how people interface with that building, right? And that still requires an architect, at least at this point. I was at a symposium with AIA CRAN in September, and there was a lot of talk about AI and some very convincing, from a business point of view, demonstrations of the applicability. For instance, during one of the presentations, a fellow using various tools, as we were talking, created a whole blog entry as we were talking, throwing out questions, having those questions answered through ChatGPT or others, having those feed into a specific graphic file that AI was leading, and actually creating avatars and the whole thing. And it was very convincing. That was a real eye-opener. And did anything get lost in the process? I don't think so, because there was still intention. What are we talking about? We're talking about X, Y, and Z. The premise of a blog entry or a document about that subject can only be helped if you have access to a whole bunch more information and it gets consolidated faster. I mean, you're not worried about spelling and typing or any of that stuff. And then you edit it. So that was very convincing. And that is on my list when things slow down over the holidays, is to jump into that process and check it out.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. It's so rapidly evolving. Like there's so many new things. Even tomorrow, there's going to be something new that could just speed things up or make things better with AI. So it's super, super interesting. But for you, your business, I know you were saying as things slow down, come the holiday season, you're going to start looking into it. But kind of going
Mhm.
along with that, looking ahead, maybe in the next 12 months, what would have to happen for you to call the next 12 months a win? What's a realistic kind of concrete goal for 2026?
Well, for us right now, it is. So my goal in life as an architect has been, from the early days, like most of us, to get to that point where we're only doing the work we want to do. Like it's all at a high level. It's all the best that we ever wanted to do. And we're not having to take work just to feed people, right? As a business owner. So that would be the highest and best, is that the awards continue, that we continue to get the work that we're doing now, that streak continues. And that my team stays as good as it is, that as we add to it, or as people leave and new people come in, that I have the ability to keep the team good. I always look at the coaching that you see, and let's say, I'm not a big sports guy, but the Golden State Warriors, for a long run there, were just doing amazing things with putting a team together. even teams of people that wouldn't necessarily seem to fit together. I think that's my goal. And I'm probably at a point now in my career where I finally have I hope, the ability to do that consistently.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great goal, honestly, keeping everyone on the team on the same page, getting better every day. So I will ask you one more question. I would just kind of like your
Mhm.
advice to maybe a newer GC that wants to build trust fast with architects and clients. What
Mhm.
do you think they should standardize first?
I think that from an operational point of view, the most important thing for me, and this is right on my mind all the time, is do I have someone on site all the time who knows what's going on at the job site, who can translate the design intention that the architect has, that I have, that my team has, to those guys in the field that are actually doing the work, and some of whom don't you can't even see the big picture. And I think any kind of first of all, that's a personality issue and a personnel question, but also, eh, you know, what tools do they have to be up to date? So we have some contractors we work with have, iPads or similar with access to everything at all times on the iPad. And I love that. So that way they always have access to all the information as long as we are sharing it on the drive or whatever. So I'd like that to continue and maybe even be enhanced. If there's a way to enhance that kind of connectivity to the documents which show the design intent, maybe to the planning and building code, something that could make code issues accessible at all times, because these things come up in the field all the time. There's a gray zone between what I know, what they know in the field, and what is even written down properly in the code. So I think that I would love to see a way for contractors or a foreman or a supervisor have the technical ability to be in touch with all documents at all times. Paper management right now is a disaster on job sites. Sets of drawings are old, they don't get thrown away, and so people are building off the wrong drawings, or pages are missing, or somebody spilled their coffee on them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Age-old problem. We should be able to overcome that now.
Yeah,
That's what I would
absolutely.
love
So
to
that's
see.
yeah, definitely. That's like the field to office communication and transparency at all times, right?
Yes, exactly.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Mark. This was great. I'll wrap it up here.
Thank
But
you.
before we close out, Mark, where should people connect with you? LinkedIn, website?
I think the website is good, but I'm most active actually on Instagram at Mark English Architect. Also, I like LinkedIn very much. I actually have a lot of, as you mentioned it, I have actually a lot of communication through LinkedIn as well. And that you can just find me at Mark English Architect.
Perfect. Well, I'll link some information below. But to the audience, thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and share with another builder or founder in your circle. But I'll see you on the next episode of The Intelligent Builder.
Thank you, Owen.